All right, my friends, welcome back to another V-Rising video. This one's going to be a fun one. We're going to be talking about all of the artifact weapons that were added in the 1.0 update. Artifacts are essentially legendary weapons, or I guess you could say they're unique weapons. Let's go ahead and kill these guys. There we go. So the cool thing about them is that if you happen to get lucky enough to drop these, which happen from, you can get them from incursion events. I believe you can get them from shard bosses as well if you get lucky in those. But these tier 2 incursion events can have a chance to drop them. Or if you get enough greater Stygian shards, you can try to buy them at the North Merchant here in Mortium. And what it's going to do, he has a small chance of giving you, instead of a purple weapon, of giving you a legendary weapon instead, or an artifact weapon. And what's cool about them is they have fixed stats and attributes, meaning that every time you get this greatsword here, the Apocalypse, it will always be these stats, which is pretty cool because it allows you to kind of expect or build around the items you get, or if there's a preferred weapon that you have, or a weapon type that you have, or maybe a specific build with spells and blood, you can kind of work around that with these legendary weapons and shoot for one that kind of fits what you want to do. So let's go ahead and jump into these. Again, we're going to be talking about Apocalypse versus the Great Sword. So as you can see, the Q deals bonus damage to ignited enemies, and the E, which obviously is pretty cool, and the E will actually spawn a lesser aftershock, yes, like the aftershock spell, on the ground. So if we just jump and use this, it shoots out an aftershock that does damage, and it will ignite enemies. So what's cool about that is it kind of plays off itself, where you can kind of E, ignite a bunch of things, and then Q into them and deal bonus damage to them. And then it has weapon attack speed, weapon cooldown recovery rate, damage reduction. All of those things are really, really good for a greatsword. You want attack speed on greatswords, because just this swing is normally really slow, but it hits extremely hard. It's the hardest, I believe it's the hardest. Let me see, actually. It's one of the hardest hitting moves in the game. It's extremely strong AoE primary attack. Let's just say that. And damage reduction is super good. I will say the Q bonus damage is solid, but it's not anything insane. And then the E, I wouldn't necessarily use that to attack enemies, like in PvP specifically. If you're doing PvE, I mean, it's perfectly fine. You can kind of just do this, throw it out there, and then hit a bunch of guys, and then Q into them to do a bunch of damage, right? Or if you're running a chaos build like I am, you can hit it with this, and then hit them with this, and it just does tons and tons of damage. So, but again, like I said, I wouldn't really use the E to get like in the middle of a fight if you can avoid it, because it's really telegraphed. It makes you very predictable if you're in PvP, because whenever I see someone jump up like this, well, I know where they're going to land. So you can kind of just go on top of them and pop like a discharge or a blood right, something along those lines, right? They can just pop one of those spells and immediately punish you for using your E. However, one thing you can use it for in PvP, in my opinion, it just kind of depends on what the situation is. If you happen to be running kind of like a scholar build and you're playing more at range or anything like that, you can consider something with this. So the E Aftershock doesn't go through blocking terrain, but what it does do is it goes through breakable terrain and breakable items. So like these breakables here, this tree, you'll notice it can just pass right through that. And so you can use that to kind of, just kind of like pierce through things that otherwise people can't pierce. But if I'm in the middle of a fight and I'm doing this, it's just very, very telegraphed. So you kind of just want to watch out for that. Okay. So next item we're going to be talking about is the Thousand Storms. This is actually one of my favorite weapons, honestly. It's not really anything like super crazy, there's nothing insane happening here. The Q needs to be static, otherwise it's probably going to be worse than a regular purple spear, because it just does so much. So spear Q does the most damage of any ability in the game, like any weapon ability in the game, and if you add static on top of that, it just becomes that much crazier. So the fact it's static, that's best in slot. And the harpoon, it says instead of pulling them to you, it pulls you to them. The problem with harpoon is it's just really telegraphed. Even though they reduced the cast time to 0.5 seconds. I mean, there's still, the thing you have to take into account is that there's still travel time. And so, like, if they're really close to you, well, then why are you using Spear E? And if they're really far away, it gives them tons of time to just pop any counter they want, or defensive ability or whatever, even dash, and just get away from it, right? So that I would say is kind of a meh thing about the E here. However, there is something that I was able to find with it that I absolutely love. And that is if you hit a breakable object, not just an enemy, but like a tree, a resource node, even a box with it, it pulls you to it, like Spider-Man. So there may be something there for the more adventurous players. So instead of like if there's somebody, you know, playing range over here, instead of trying to hit them with the spear, you could try to do something like, okay, well, you know, maybe I'll just like, instead of hitting it with the spear, I'll just like throw it out to this, right? And pull myself to it and kind of give yourself, maybe make it a little harder to hit or close the gap that way. It's a pretty big commitment for a spell though, or skill though, especially because E is a very valuable weapon skill. There's just so many good things on E. So, however, it's pretty cool. In terms of stats, it has pretty much a perfect role here, other than, I mean, the only thing you could add to this that make it even better would be probably crit damage, but that would make it way too OP. I'm sure no weapons have that kind of a role, right? Physical crit strike chance and crit damage. There's just no way. That's called foreshadowing. Okay, next we're going to be moving on to Mortira's Lament. This is a really cool one if you're into casting and summoning builds. Look at those stats first and foremost. Just crit strike chance, spell crit power and crit chance and CDR on your spells. That is like actual bis if you're a caster. That's insane. The E, unlike the spear, if you were to throw the E on something, it will not summon the skeletons. You'll notice here it says E will hits, inflict, condemn, and have a 25% chance to summon a skeleton warrior. It doesn't work on things like that. However, it absolutely works on enemies. Just look at those skeletons coming alive here, right? Yep, so super, super cool. Oh, he missed. All right, let's do it again. Look at that. Just getting all those skeletons for us. We like that. Okay, so, but however, not only does the E summon skeletons, what's really cool about it as well, you see on the Q, it says it consumes up to 3 allied skeletons, and it heals you for 50% of your spell power. So in this case, it'd be like, what is that, like 24-ish health per skeleton that you consume. And it increases spell and physical power by 10% for 8 seconds, which is actually a pretty solid amount. So kind of an interesting concept to, if you have a lot of skeletons, you're really into summon builds or, you know, Ward of the Damned or whatever it may be. You absolutely could do something where you use that Q to consume them. Let's say you had, you know, Corrupted Skull with the jewel that summons 2 skeletons and it has 2 charges. So you can kind of just double throw this out, right? All of a sudden there's 4 skeletons. You can queue them and all of a sudden you have just massive amounts of power for another spell, maybe an ultimate, or even something on another weapon, right? So overall, this weapon's really cool. I mean, this is a really good weapon overall. Condemn is super nice. We really like having Condemn. But the one thing I will say is if you notice on Q, it doesn't apply Condemn. As far as no, let me just make sure that's the case. Yeah, it didn't apply Condemn, that's actually not all that great, because we actually really like our Reapers to apply Condemn. Because there's certain things you can do with Reapers, like Reaper Q, like this. Right, so you Reaper Q, you immediately switch to pistols. And then when they're at that range, you can kind of just start shooting them. The fact that it doesn't apply Condemn is kind of sad. So, however, it's still really good, especially for casting builds. Like, and if you're doing a lot of casting, it's a pretty cool idea. So keep that in mind. Oh, we got a little friend here. Let's go ahead and use it one more time here against these guys because it's fun to watch. Okay, let's go ahead and do this. Look at the damage. Okay, she's jumping around. Let's go ahead and hit her. And no skeletons respawning because that's the luck of the draw. It's a 25% chance, so... Oh, let's go ahead and do that. All right, so next thing we're talking about is the axes. Well, this is a super crazy weapon overall. Yeah, it's pretty insane. So the Q being Frenzy, adding for 1 additional second of attack speed is legitimately insane in my opinion, because the Frenzy speed that it gives you already is crazy. So, oh, I thought it was attacking me over there. The attack speed it gives you is really, really, really strong. However, on top of that, something that you can do with Frenzy is if you hit something, you can actually, you don't have to use that attack speed bonus on axes. You can switch to another weapon that has a maybe a bigger or better benefit to having attack speed than axes, because axes is pretty slow, a pretty small AoE, and the hits are good, but they're not like crazy, right? But what you can do is you can actually switch to a stronger or whatever weapon and benefit from that frenzy Q. So for instance, like this, I can do Q on this, and all of a sudden you're swinging a greatsword with super high attacks, with super high damage, extremely fast, and because it lasts for an additional second, I mean, you can get some crazy attacks off. Let me just show you what happens whenever you use it with our next one here, the Morning Star. This junk is a little crazy. Just look at this. I mean, that's kind of broken. Like, it's so crazy if you land that to somebody, right? And then obviously X strike now is it shoots 4 instead of, this is the one that's been leaked for a while ago. It shoots 4 instead of 2, and the extra axes do additional damage, and they apply leech, which is pretty cool. But the one thing you have to watch out for on this, the axe, I'm assuming it's intended, the secondary axes that are added actually break the incapacitate. Watch this. Oh, I just completely missed it. Go ahead and wait up a second here. Let's kill this guy because the other guy's annoying. Look at that damage. All right, so we're gonna go like this. Let's just see what he does here. See, it broke the incapacitate. So it's okay. We have the Q, right? So, yes, keep in mind though, yes, it does break the incapacitate, but it just does so much damage, and it's such a gigantic AoE that it doesn't, it matters, but it doesn't matter in a lot of ways, because yes, it's important to get those axe E's to stun somebody because you can kind of set up some combos. But dude, the damage this thing does and the range that it is just so overwhelming sometimes. I mean, just look at that. Like, it's so crazy. Okay, and then stat roll, weapon life leech, weapon skill life leech, max health, physical bonus power. It's pretty good. Physical bonus power is pretty cool. Health is fine. That's fine. The issue is our health has actually been gigantically increased. So we now have 1,000. Back in the day, our max was like 600. So 50 health would have been like a really good solid increase to health. That's almost 10%, right? But now we have 1,000 HP, so plus 50 health is like neat. You know? Like, everyone's doing hundreds of damage a hit, so 50 is just not that much anymore. Okay. Now we're going to get to the weapon that I foreshadowed. Remember when I said, wouldn't it be crazy if you had physical crit strike chance and crit damage and stuff, and weapon attack speed or whatever? Well, it turns out they decided to put that on not only on a weapon, but probably the most busted weapon in the game, which is the Morning Star, individually busted. So this weapon is insane. As you can see, the aerial whip twirl, so this Q right here, it already does really, really good damage. It's 100% of your physical damage. It's really fast, has a gigantic AoE, but on this, it also burns. So it doesn't do... yeah, it's just so much damage. The damage it does is insane, so it burns. Okay, which is wild. Then there's Entangling Whip, which will hit and stun for 0.25 seconds. And it does bonus damage, and the impacted area will burn kind of like a fire arrow, right? And you can see I'm taking 9 damage a tick, which is pretty solid. That'll happen to me. It'll also happen to the enemies that you're hitting. And yes, I understand the 0.25 second stun isn't all that long, and compared to a regular whip, it's like 1 second of entangling. But keep in mind the 1 second entanglement breaks immediately on any damage, including ignite. That means if you had like an ignite whip or something and you hit them with an E, you're basically just immediately going to break them anyway. So you might as well just have this. And the stun is really good because it actually interrupts. So if they're trying to cast something or channel something, you can kind of just smack them with the E. The range is super, super good. And overall, the damage is bonkers beyond belief. I'm just going to show you what this looks like whenever we fight somebody. I guess there's not really many groups here. Let's see here. Let's go over here. Yeah, let's just show you what this looks like when you fight these guys. Ready? All right, so if you space it really well, that's the whole thing with this. I mean, just look at that damage. It's so crazy. All right, let's go over here. Hit this guy again. Big damage. the big damage, and he's dead, right? And so we were just, and the thing that makes it so crazy is not only is the attack speed insane, the crit strike chance is high. Imagine pairing this with Rogue Blood or in Rogue, everything, you know, everything. Just having insane crit strike chance, tons of crit strike power. Rogue armor is like pretty meta at the moment, just because the movement speed and crit chance is insane. Extra crit damage is insane. So it's like, it's all going into and making this thing absolutely ridiculous. You have crazy move speed, crazy attack speed, crazy crit chance, and then you have crazy physical crit strike power. Like, it's all just boosted to insanity with this weapon. So if you like the whip, this thing is freaking nuts, and you should be gunning for this all the time. Like, this thing is crazy. I'm telling you now, this weapon is insane. Okay, next we're gonna talk about the Endbringers. Pretty cool overall, but I will say after using them a bit, it's not really all that much to write home about. We like the movement speed, we like the weapon cooldown recovery rate, especially with the nerfs to the iframes on like Pistol E and Slasher Q and things like that. So that is really nice to have. But they didn't really fix Fan the Hammer. And on top of that, in my opinion, static, if you're going to use Fan the Hammer for anything, you're going to want to use it with static because it hits so many times, right? You want that to be static, not ignite. Ignite doesn't do any, every one of the tests doesn't really matter, right? It's not going to be doing additional ignite. It just like, I would imagine just refreshes the ignite rate or the ignite timer, which is like neat, but who cares? By the time it's over, it's probably ticked once. So it's going to get like one additional ignite tick maybe. Not that good. And then move speed, I mean, who really cares? It's nice. It's good for PvE. I will say that. Like, it's pretty decent for PvE. The movement, just a little bit. Just to kind of like move while you're shooting and, you know, kind of move back, maybe kite a little bit while you're attacking, you know, dealing with enemies and stuff. But overall, kind of meh. The E in PvP, oh, by the way, Fan the Hammer is trash in PvP. If you did not know this, you should not be using Fan the Hammer. And the reason why, there's a billion reasons why, but the biggest reason right now is Discharge is like the most popular spell in the game at the moment. Because it's just insanely, in my opinion, it's just insanely overpowered. It just needs to be completely reworked the way it is, or at least like change something about it. It's just insane. I'm not going to go on a Discharge right now, but it's crazy. And so if you're using this, it gives them literally all the time in the world to just walk at you and do this, which will immediately stop you from pressing Q and will stun you and pull you to them, right? So don't do that. Don't press Q at somebody in PvP. And then Explosive Bullet, you know, if you land it, it's pretty cool because you can do another shot. So let's go ahead and use it on this girl right here. And you can see that does insane damage. Really, really, really good damage if you hit them both. It does a lot. The problem is in PvP, it can be kind of tough to hit them both. You actually do get a lot of time on the recast, right? So you do have a lot of time to kind of like take and line up your next shot or like bait them with it and make them like worry about it and maybe wonder if you're going to shoot another one. And again, if you land it, it does big damage. It does do big damage if you land it. But overall, it's not required by any means. It's nice having weapon skill cooldown and recovery on a weapon like this. But I would just go with purple. If you only get purples on your pistols, that's totally fine. Like, it's totally fine. Okay, next we're gonna talk about slashers, which we have two variants of, the Cloud Dancers and Wings of the Fallen. So between the two of these, I think Cloud Dancers is just strictly better. The problem with this weapon, it's really bad. That's the problem. That's pretty much the only problem, right? It's just really, really bad. So Q Inflicting Leech is like, who cares? I mean, I guess you could do something with like a leech build with like Shadow Bolt or something, or some other thing that's like, hey, consume leech. Like, you could do something like there's a jewel on Veil of Blood where if you hit someone with leech after using your Veil attack, right? It's like, and they have leech on them, it will increase your physical power for like 4 seconds. So I guess you could get away with that with this weapon, with this thing, kind of. But overall, it's just not that good. It is pretty bad. The other issue with this is Vampiric Curse. It's not good. Like, the problem with Vampiric Curse, so it's replacing the stun. One of the only reasons you use the camouflage is to stun. Like, that is legitimately the major reason, is to get the incapacitate. So you hit them with this, then you can weapon swap and do insane damage to them. Well, with this weapon, with this, you know, this specific weapon here, you can't do that. It just completely disables that. You can also, I mean, there's so many different combos you can do off of a stun, right? The incapacitate, which also brings me to the Cloud Dancer. So first of all, and also keep in mind 30% health is not all that much. It's like 30 HP, 30 something HP, which is cool, I guess, but like you're also not stunning them. So it means the second they hit them, they can just immediately punish you because they're not stunned. And they can iframe the Vampiric Curse, which means they can do something like this. The Vampiric Curse is about to tick down on them, and they can just go like this. And it just completely dodges all of the damage from that curse. So, neat, I guess, right? So speaking of consuming, you know, having issues with stun, issue with the Cloud Dancers. The Q is pretty cool, I will say. Like this isn't kind of cool. Is adding static is really great. But keep in mind that it says the next hit on your E ability, your next hit consumes static, giving a Storm Shield. The problem with that is the Storm Shield is a little rotating lightning ball around you. Problem with that is if you consume the static and make a Storm Shield, what's going to happen a lot of times is, let's see if we can do it on somebody and not kill them instantly. The problem is, let's see here. Oh, here, let's just do this. Let's have him try to attack me here. I have an idea. Come on, little brother. Come on. Okay, so watch. You're going to hit him with static, and now watch this. Oh, he just died. Of course he died. What am I thinking? Of course he died. I can use it on these guys. Here we go. Here we go. So I'm going to show you what happens whenever you hit it with static here. Let's hit this guy. Let's just kill one of them first. Let's kill this guy first. Okay. All right, so. Okay, so watch this. Right? See how the static orbs hit them instantly? So it instantaneously broke the stun yet again. So we're going to try it one more time. He might die from this. There we go. See? Yeah, there you go. So it just kind of instantly breaks the stun. So obviously you probably wouldn't want to be using Q into E combos regardless. But there's so much static happening from stuff like discharge these days that you're going to like use static from discharge, and then you're going to do this. And then it's just going to basically instantly break the stun. Obviously, you have storm shields from that, but you get the idea. So there's so much ways to apply static now, and it's just going to apply a storm shield and break their incapacitate. Kind of makes it a little rough, but overall, very good. Oh gosh. Okay, let's just go ahead and do this. Let's use one more time just to show you what I mean. See, it just broke it instantaneously. Yay! Let's go ahead and cast these guys. There we go. Okay. Yeah, and so between the two of these, I would go Cloud Dancers. That's the overall takeaway from this. And even then, just watch out for that consuming static to give you a Storm Shield, because it's going to break the stun pretty much instantly and make it really hard to do other things with it. All right, Oaksong. This thing's pretty wild. I've just recently went against this in V Arena, and it just absolutely dumpstered me. I feel like you kind of like have to run with the prevalence of, or how good this is. You like have to run discharge. That's the biggest problem. Is bow into discharge is really difficult. You have to like, that's like the thing really keeping this somewhat in line here. But the thing with this is if you have like a really high attack speed build, let's see, I guess like this, I guess. I don't really have the blood for it. If you have really high attack speed build, you can kind of start shooting these a lot faster. You also have the idea with Wail of Chaos. You have this bonus here with Dracula's Grim set. You see the bottom where it says Wail attacks heal additionally, but also gain 10% attack speed for 3 seconds after using a Wail, right? That doesn't, you don't have to land the attack, it's just after using the Wail. And the thing is, it activates twice with Wail of Chaos. So like we go like this, right? You can look at the bottom left right here, you'll see the buff. Oh, actually, no, I have to hit. Okay, yeah, here you go, yeah. It worked, never mind, it worked. Let's see here, let's see if it works here. We'll do it one more time here. Yeah, see. Yeah, so if you dash twice, it'll activate it both times. I don't know why I'm like getting distracted by this. Here, so watch. There it is. And then dash again, and there it is. See? Okay, we're just getting owned. Very fun. And here we go. Okay, lots of guys here. We just gotta take care of these guys. Anyway, so the thing about this is you can really kind of use, if you use a lot of movement speed, it makes, with this thing, which it has additional movement speed, It makes it really difficult to catch up with somebody. They could just kite the ever-living crap out of you. What I would suggest is if you're trying to kill someone with Oaksong, who or has longbow, and you're not using something like discharge or whatever, personally, I just wouldn't chase them. Don't let them kite you. Like, let them try to come to you and use like line of sight to things so that they have to like move around, right? So if somebody's right here and you're trying to run at them and they have a bow, they're literally just going to sit here and just kite you for days, right? And then you're just like, oh my gosh, this thing's so annoying, right? So instead, if they're trying to kill you, just try to get around line of sight and force them closer to you. That way, at the very least, you can have some kind of chance of doing damage to them, because otherwise it's pretty difficult. All right, next things here. There's 3 other weapons here. We're going to talk about the Hand of Winter. So this one's pretty cool. There's some issues, but it is pretty cool. So it says here that, let's go ahead and do this. Let's go like that. So 125% bonus damage to frozen targets is really neat. The issue is frozen targets have a little miniature shield on top of them, so technically that's getting a little bit nerfed, right? So like the damage is getting a little bit reduced from that. So like we'll go like this, show you what that looks like. See, I have a little shield on them. I'm not using the right weapon. It's okay. We'll go like this. All right, so we're gonna use this one more time. And we're gonna press Q. Big damage. You see that 164 damage with no crit. That's super crazy. However, one of the biggest issues with this in PvP, so in PvE, I mean, have at it, dude. I mean, why not? You know, if you're gonna freeze things, obviously it's not good against bosses because you can't freeze bosses. But if you're gonna freeze things, you might as well just freeze everything with Cold Snap or like Crystal Lance, right? Like pierce things with Crystal Lance, just freeze a bunch of things, or like Ice Nova, that kind of thing. And then just Q into them and just dumpster all of them at once. By all means, have at it. E smacking to freeze is pretty cool because already the smack is really good to get people off of you. And if you're able to freeze them too, it gives you a lot more time to like line something else up on top of them, right? So it can be like an ult, it can be, you know, some Q ability, whatever. You can, you know, freeze them with E and then Q into them. That kind of thing. Stats on this: spell cooldown, recovery rate, 50 health, meh. 3 physical bonus power, okay. Like, it's fine, right? The biggest issue you're gonna run into with this weapon in PvP is the prevalence of counters, and the Q is notoriously bad about proccing counters because it just has a big AoE. It's also extremely telegraphed. You just see it coming really easily. Same thing goes for greatsword with counters. If you get used to it enough, you see that greatsword wind up, you know it's coming, and then someone's just going to press discharge, and it totally negates your Q. But yeah, so this one's by far worse. So keep that in mind. A little bit sketch. Okay, Gravecaller. This thing is hilarious. Let's see if we can find a group to use this. This is my personal favorite meme. I said the spear was. I take it back. It's the Gravecaller. This is my favorite meme PvE weapon. It's so funny. Let's just do this. Let's see here. Let's get these guys to hit us real quick. And now watch this. Whee! So ridiculous. The Q lasts forever, right? Let's try that again with these guys here. Let's go ahead and hit these guys with it. And we Q on top of them. And we spin like crazy. So what it does is whenever you kill someone, it increases the duration of your Q by 1 second, and everything inflicts condemn. It can be increased up to 3 times, so plus 3 full seconds on your spin. You can see how long that lasts. It is hilarious. And with condemn, obviously, it's also like summoning skeletons as well. The problem there is in PvP, you'd rather this be static because it hits a lot of times or whatever, and you want it to be static because that static does extra bonus damage. Already, it's really important to use this against counters, and counters are really prevalent. So I would have preferred this to be a static on Q, but I mean it's pretty cool. Whatever. Shockwave E. So if you hit somebody with Shockwave, it now does increased damage in the air. It's just a straight buff. It says Shockwave. Every strike that you hit them in the air with deals 20% bonus damage and reduces the cooldown of Whirlwind, the Q, by 0.5 seconds. So, I mean, that's pretty solid, but overall, this thing is kind of meh. The problem with the Shockwave is just like the most telegraphed ability in the entire game. It just takes so long to come out, and it like flies like that. I mean, look at this. I mean, if you can't dodge that, I mean, obviously you're gonna get hit by an event every so often, but it's just so telegraphed. It's really, really, really hard to you know, to dodge this or start to like land it all the time or consistently. Um, and a lot of times in PvE, not to get too crazy into it, but a lot of times in PvE, you don't necessarily even want to follow them up into the air if you're close. So like you kind of miss out on the 20% bonus damage and the cooldown reduction. So it's fine, you know. But I wouldn't really use this again. Normal, I probably would just rather use a static sword to be honest, static purple with, you know, with for the Q, because that's for sure the most important. All right, and last we're going to talk about is the Siren's Wail. So this thing originally, I was like dumpster tier, like who really cares? The fear is neat, and additional bolts is kind of neat. Especially because the bow is in the game. So personally, I kind of still think that. I still think it's kind of meh. But there is something cool with this. Something I realized that comes with just crossbows in general is if you land a Q or an E, it marks the enemy, right? It gives us a little mark on top of them. I don't want to aggro all these guys. Let's go over here, see if we can find like one guy. Here we go. So if you hit him with a Q, it adds a mark on top of them, right? And of course he missed it. So I hit him with that one. And then if I hit that guy, it gives me attack speed. Right? So the idea is you hit this, you just like mark up a bunch of people, right? And you get tons of attack speed. You can see how fast that is, right? The idea is you hit a bunch of people with the Q because it has 2 additional bolts, and then you can press E to like fear them, to consume that weaken and fear them, doing a ton of damage and fear them for 2 seconds, which helps you line something else up, like a Crystal Lance, for example. And then it also will increase your attack speed if you consume the mark. Issue is you're only going to really get, I guess you could technically get 2 marks consumed on the same player somewhat easily, and obviously you could stack up to 3 times, so I guess you could do that. Problem is it's just really slow, especially compared to Oaksong. So let's go ahead and hit these guys. Whoops. There, whatever. It's pretty slow, especially when compared to Oaksong. It's just but however, the one thing I will say is the attack speed bonus that you get from this, right, from consuming the mark, actually stays for a really long time. I think it was like 8 seconds or something, or 7 seconds. Oh, 10 seconds. There, 10 seconds, up to 3 times. So you can get a total of 21% attack speed, and that carries over to your other weapons. So like you could technically crossbow Q on top of a group, and then hit a bunch of things, or like maybe shoot like a Siren's Wail, this thing here, the E, the snapshot, and like fear people, then you hitting them, and you're doing all this stuff, and all of a sudden your attack speed's super high, and then you can swap to our favorite weapon, the whip, and all of a sudden you're attacking even faster, you know, than before, or greatsword, or whatever you want to use. So overall, kind of cute, good for raid defense, I would imagine. Still, I would imagine this is probably still good for raid defense because the more bolts is kind of cool. They're pretty tight spread. You know, that's kind of nice. Fearing people away is pretty cool. So I'd imagine it's probably solid for raid. I'm not sure. I haven't done it yet. Yeah, but anyway, so that is going to be all the artifact weapons. In my opinion, overall, if you're a whip fan, get the Morningstar. It is cracked. This is super, super good, even though it breaks the incapacitate. This is really good, even though watch out for the storm shields. Static, yep, this is crazy. Just, I mean, this kind of Abyss just has really good stats overall. And I guess, yeah, I guess you could probably technically roll a purple that might be a little bit better if it had static Q and then like crit chance, crit chance and crit damage. So I guess like technically you could roll a better one there. This one's really good overall. Yeah, pretty solid. I mean, this is pretty interesting one right here. Even though some people like condemn on their greatsword Qs personally, because you can hit them with the greatsword Q like this, and then they're condemned, right? And then you your next hit is basically a confirmed hit, and you do bonus damage to them. So, yep. So overall, that's where we're gonna end this. We're gonna talk about these things. Pretty cool. I actually really like them. I'm glad they're in the game. But yeah, so yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the description below. But for now, that's going to be it. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll catch you in the next one.